You know the number one rule of being a landlord? You know what that is?
No.
Customer service?
Oh, yeah, but you know what it is? No. Yes?
What is it?
No.
Look, I get it. The Toronto real estate market is confusing. Whether you're a new or experienced investor or just looking for a home to raise your family in, join us at Broadview Table Talks as we sit around the table with my friends and talk about the real estate and the ever-changing market in Toronto.
So I was just on CBC not too long ago on The National, which is actually really cool. But it was a really controversial topic, and I do want to address it in today's podcast. And that is the difference between landlords and tenants. And it's really the housing affordability crisis that we're in, and who's paying for the increase in prices, right? Is it the landlord's responsibility or is it tenant's responsibility? It was kind of cool. They set us on a round table between all the tenants, landlords, like different spectrums, and I was representing the landlord side of it. And there's a lot of hate on YouTube.
I think there's just a lot of hate towards landlords in general. But
it's so silly. And I know all you guys here understand this, and maybe people listening to this podcast understand as well too. But if there was no landlords, there's no place for people to rent.
Exactly.
Sure.
Yep.
Right. And then, okay, so the tenant side, I'll play a devil's advocate for a couple, right? Because I know their arguments. And their arguments is saying that we're the ones driving up the prices. If it wasn't for landlords buying properties, prices wouldn't be so expensive. You know, I think there was a study done this year, that 20% of purchasers were investors. Only 20%. So the other 4/5, the other 80% are actually end users.
Exactly.
I don't know if that's true or not, but anyway, at the end of the day, I think that I don't. So yes, taking a real estate property and like somebody's home and financializing it, making it like, you know, charging money for it, making a profit, is the controversial issue. Tenants don't like that. They want their housing for free or cheap. Right? But you know what? I saw the best comment. I actually have it open here. And it says that housing investors like Kenneth are the bane of all Canadian housing market. So he's treating housing like stocks, all leverage, meaning he can't afford these properties. He's just using rent to pay off his mortgages. But before fully paying off the mortgage, he would go then buy another property. Then he has the audacity to complain about rising interest rates. If you can't afford something, don't buy it. It's like the person using a credit card to buy $3,000 and then complain about high credit card interest. He gets no sympathy from me. Sure, I totally understand what that means. But somebody else said, which is true, the reasonable person says, he's running a legitimate business. Many businesses use leverage, and all businesses use leverage. Change Mr. Yim to Hertz and housing to rental cars, and it's the exact same situation. Your envy is clouding your rationale.
Yeah.
Like the first guy is just a hater. He's probably at home, like just doing that. Just hating on everything.
Warrior.
There was a funny comment too that said something about how landlords greed or something like that, or want to profit, and then tenants. I gotta find it, but it said like tenants hate or something, or jealous. Tenants are jealous.
Yeah.
But I shouldn't like. We gotta be a little sensitive in that, okay? Like tenants aren't bad people; they're customers. They need a place to live. They want to rent.
Yeah.
Either they choose to or they have to, right? Because they don't have the capital to buy something. Yeah. There's no shame in that. It's just the way it is.
Or they're just moving into the city. They're trying to figure out which area they want to be in. You know, not all of them are, bad.
I think it's very much like team versus team, and it doesn't have to be, right? Like landlord doesn't necessarily need to be against a renter or the other way around. Like we can definitely work together, and there's always a need, and not everybody necessarily wants to buy either.
Well,
but I think it's like in Toronto, especially with the rental market, I think a lot of renters are angry and they don't really have anyone to place the blame on. So it automatically goes on to the landlord.
And fundamentally, it sounds like, there are a lot of people who are actually angry with landlords because they don't have anyone to properly blame.
Exactly.
But ultimately, it feels like, the system has sort of failed us. And this is why we're in a housing crisis.
Right.
And why private landlords are now being relied upon to either improve existing housing stock or to even increase housing stock.
Right.
Well, the issue is, so I was talking to some other people too about it, right? Like ideally it would be the federal government providing housing.
For sure.
Right. But then it's what communism is really, right? Like it's fascism, right? Like it's like they shouldn't be providing housing for it's like they're relying on the private market, like the general people, everybody, the investors, to provide rental housing for people. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that, because like investors will have vested interest in keeping their property maintained, because there's a lot of maintenance. There's like a lot of inefficiencies that if it's run federally, centrally by a central government, that would happen, right? A lot of corruption, a lot of, all that kind of stuff.
Red tape, bureaucracy.
Pardon me?
Red tape and bureaucracy.
Yeah, absolutely. Because they got to make plans for things that are universal between all different locations and all different provinces and cities and municipalities. And it's impossible. It's really hard to do that. And like, you know, why should taxpayers pay for that too, right? At the same time.
Yeah.
So on the other hand, I understand the point of not keeping housing as a free market, like leaving it to the free markets, because supply is an issue, right? We can't build it. Like supply is the answer to everything, by the way. Yeah. It's just, if we created enough, then housing would be cheaper because there'd be more supply to pick from. Right now we're limited. We have, you know, 500,000 people coming to the country.
Yeah.
100,000 starts, housing completions, I should say, maybe 200,000 at the highest.
They don't make it as fast.
You can't make it as fast. And you know why they can't make it as fast?
Red tape.
Red tape, because zoning, because of NIMBYism. You know, if you own a house in a neighborhood, you don't want a 15-story apartment building as your neighbor. Right? Think of, or even like a triplex, for that matter.
I actually don't mind that.
I know you don't.
I
We
live
got
at
in a
Pape and Danforth,
talk the
and we
other
got the I mean, it's just going to bring better businesses into the area.
Yeah.
Density, yeah,
Density.
yeah, exactly. We talked about that in the last podcast, or one of the podcasts. But yeah, density for sure brings in a lot more issues with that, right? Like a lot of capacity issues, traffic, and just people you don't want in your neighborhood. So I totally get why. And forget about the NIMBYism and zoning rules. What about like the productive capacity of construction crews? There's only so many cranes out there. There's only so many, you know, construction people, foremans and all that kind of stuff. Like there's only so many that you
Yeah,
can,
and then the city just gets busy, traffic, everything just
So much
doubles
traffic
up, right? So
due to construction.
Yeah. We need better infrastructure, but it's not in
100%,
place. And
So-
the need was like 10 years ago. We needed it 10 years ago. We needed it 20 years ago.
Right. So yeah, you're right. So the infrastructure can't keep up to the growing pace of development. Development can't keep up because there's, you know, first of all, like getting permission to build, and then also the ability for crews to build. We can't just keep up with the demand. But the problem is we need this demand because there's immigration coming into the country. And the reason why we need immigration is because our workforce is aging. We're getting older. We're not getting as productive. We're not producing as much. Our GDP is going down. Per capita is going down. Like per person is going down. And that's a bad thing for our economy because we can't support our social services. It's like a pyramid scheme that's going to like gone upside down. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It is a pyramid scheme.
it's kind of crumbling around us at this point.
It is. So there's a global fight for immigration. Like everywhere in the world wants more immigrants coming in. And everywhere else around the world is horrible. Like there's a lot of bad things going on in the world. So they want to come to Canada where it's politically safe, economically safe and all that stuff. But if our housing becomes too unaffordable, they're not going to come here.
And that's a conversation I had recently with someone that we recently moved into Canada, where they said that it's getting a little bit too expensive here. And they realized that if they just made the same income that they did, but they lived elsewhere, which they can because they can work remotely, they would actually be living a lot better.
So that was my comment on that soundbite at the CBC thing where it says, if you can't afford to live there, there's other parts of Canada that you can live in. And I know it sounds like it didn't get well received for sure. Like I totally get it. It's controversial because moving is hard. Like nobody wants to just pick up their life, especially if they've been for 15 years, their kids are in school or whatever, and just move. But like, if you really have to make that move, do it.
Yeah.
Right? Like there's nothing wrong with going to like Calgary or whatever, right? Like there's people moving to Calgary now.
Yeah. But people that have had their whole lives here don't want to uproot their lives to go somewhere else just because housing affordability isn't a thing.
I get it. I totally get it.
Yeah. It's hard.
But who's paying for that increase in taxes,
I totally get it.
insurance, maintenance, interest, taxes? I always said taxes, but et cetera. Right? There's increased costs for housing. Who pays for that? The landlord? The tenant?
I mean, I don't have
In
the
between both?
solution here, Ken.
No, I'm just talking out loud though, right? Like, I don't think anybody does. And if you did, you'd be prime minister, right?
Yeah.
So like nobody can solve it. It's a big problem.
Yes.
And that's why it's a crisis, affordability crisis. But like just theoretically, think about it. So you've lived there, your whole family's there, you've been there for 15 years in that community, you have friends, you have, you know, kids in school, and you can't just pick up and go because you're all of a sudden your landlord wants the place back. So there's rules preventing that in Ontario. You can't just take your place back because even though it's your asset, you can't kick the tenants. It's people's homes at the end of the day. Totally fine with that. But saying that if somebody has a one bedroom and they have a new kid and they need to move to a second bedroom, but then they can't afford the space because it's just double the rent now and they can't afford it, why do you have to be there? That's all I'm saying. Like there's other options. Move to Bowmanville, move to like, you know, whatever, Barrie, something, right? Like that's more affordable. There's still great jobs out there. Well, not as good jobs as Toronto, obviously, but
Has transit.
And not as good transit. I mean, you can argue that, but like
Go transit.
go train.
yeah, like it's just
to the city.
Yeah, it's like 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think a bottom line comes down to change is bad. Like people don't like change. People are afraid of change. Change is good. I should say, but people don't like change.
People don't like change, exactly. Because
People
they're very comfortable where they are and what they know. It's kind of like it's very scared for them to move. So,
and I think if you practice flex that muscle of change and always try to change things up, you get used to it. It's like doing reps. You know what I mean? Like, what's the process of getting jacked like Botter is, right? It's about ripping muscle. You know, it's like lifting weights is ripping muscle. You're damaging your body so that it can recover better.
Yeah. Makes you more adaptable.
Well, that's it, right?
Yeah.
So I don't find anything with the comment I said. I mean, like, I don't know, some people might hate what we're saying and what we represent as landlords.
I don't know. I have empathy for both sides. I really do. Because I think even that guy that said, you know, he lived in that unit for 15 years. I think if he was in the position to also be a landlord, he would probably jump on that opportunity. Seems like he really loves and cares about his kids a lot. Like, I think if he had the opportunity to do so, he would probably do the exact same thing. Right. So I don't, do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do understand.
I get it. Like for example, for me, I'm like in both situations. Like I do have a tenant, and then also I am a tenant.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like,
exactly.
I guess it comes down to the relationship you have with the landlord. Like my tenant's amazing. Like they're nice. They're like the sweetest people. They pay early. Like they don't bug me or anything like that. And vice versa. Same thing with us. Like we don't really give them any problems.
Yeah.
We have a rental increase that's happening in March by like the standard 2.5%. But we're fine with that.
Yeah.
It is what it is, right?
So 2.5% increase for your rent, but inflation's running at 7 or 8%. So theoretically, your property itself, the one that you own, is going up by 7 or 8%.
Oh yeah, my mortgage is up.
Huge.
Yeah.
Now, forget about your mortgage. Your maintenance fees go up.
Yeah,
too,
my maintenance fees actually did go up too.
That's what I'm saying.
It was like a
That's
nice.
what I'm saying. So
like
why
just
are we mandated by 2.5%?
Yeah.
But also
Or
spread
1.2% last
that across 15 years. I mean, that
It just compounds.
It compounds,
and it gets further and further away.
Yeah.
Right. So that's my gripe about it. I totally get what you're saying, Michelle, about
No,
how.
but I also understand the landlords. Like, we purchase that pre-construction. Eventually, we'll be landlords, and we'll be in, you know, the same boat. I just think we need to have empathy for both sides, and it can't be like a us versus them. We
need
need
to work together.
Well, we're
we
talking
need
about
to
the
kinda work
outliers. We're
together.
not talking about the relationships because I get along great with all my tenants, right? So
No,
it's
I know.
more about
But what I'm saying is
the
those people that are
outliers,
angry.
the bad landlords and bad tenants.
Yeah. Well, yeah. There's definitely both.
And that's what
on
the
both
landlord tenant
sides.
board is supposed to help you protect.
Well, they
against, right?
don't.
Well, they do. It's just the long wait times.
It's a long
Yeah, but I think
process.
And everybody deserves the right to be heard and have
Yeah.
a fair
Yeah.
trial, if you will, right?
Yeah.
But so, yes, I am.
But it definitely is failing landlords, I think, on that side. There's a lot of horror stories out there. Like, why is it in some cases tenants are not paying their rent for like 11 months before you can even
because
be
of the wait
seen?
times.
No,
So
I know.
In
but
theory,
that's like,
if it was
that's
supposed
where
to
it's
be 2
failing.
months, like how it was back in the
Yeah.
day, it took 2 months, and then
Yeah.
you would get your hearing, and then you'd be able to recoup the costs,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, it takes time to screen the proper tenants properly and choose the right tenants so you have a good relationship with them.
Yeah.
But ultimately, as a landlord, that's what you're doing. You're providing customer service to somebody to rent your place, and they're paying for that.
It's also the risk of doing business as well. Like
Yeah.
getting a bad tenant in there. That's a risk that landlords knowingly take.
Right. So talking about the empathy part, though, I totally get that, but like, you know, I don't want to boot them out either. I don't want to have to, you know, make them uproot and all that kind of stuff. And they should be entitled to live life. You know, the number one rule of being a landlord, you know what that is?
No.
Customer service.
Oh yeah, but you know what it is? No. Yes.
What is it?
No.
It's quiet enjoyment. You should give your tenants quiet enjoyment. You shouldn't be harassing them. You have to give them the right to enjoy the property. If they want to live like pigs, let them live like pigs. It's okay. It's not your thing. As long as you're not damaging the place, right? As long as there's no substantial
that's
damage,
true.
you have to give them quiet enjoyment, and that's actually defined in the legislation, in the Residential Tenancies Act. So anyway, my point is that I'm not trying to kick them out because whatever reason, but like if they need to move for whatever reason, if their life moves and they can't move anywhere else because they can't afford it, why do they have the right to stay there? Is what I'm saying. Like, why do they feel, sorry, I shouldn't say the right. Why do they feel entitled and feel like they should stay there and that their life shouldn't change because the whole world's financial picture changed?
Yeah.
And the landlord's the one left carrying the bag, holding the bag.
I 100% agree with you. But if you put yourself in their shoes, I think they just feel like they're, I don't know,
Being the victim?
against a wall.
Yeah,
Like,
backed
kinda,
into a wall.
yeah.
Like a victim?
Yeah.
Well,
And
I
not
mean,
everyone has the ability to be like, okay, this is the situation I'm faced with, so I'm going to do this. And I can also empathize with the landlord. Like, not everyone has the ability to think like that.
Well,
Do you know what I mean?
well, that's their just the reaction they just have, right? Once everything, oh, by the way, they don't think about, oh, the landlords have to pay extra now, blah,
They
blah,
don't.
blah. They just
They
react. They're not
Because a lot of
thinking.
people think that landlords are greedy and yada, yada,
And they're
yada.
like billionaires
Yeah.
and stuff like that. I get it.
Yeah.
So
Just
that's
playing
what I went.
devil's advocate.
No, I'm with you on that. That's why I went on TV, national TV, to talk about that, right? And try to give. We only had so much time to talk about
Yeah.
it, so
Yeah.
here we are continuing the conversation
Yeah.
because I get it. Like it's hard. Like the net worth of real estate owners, people that own real estate, is significantly higher than the tenant population. It just it is. It's because of leverage, because over time compounds. And tenants, if you have the money in your hand, you're not going to put it in a savings account or whatever. You're going to spend it. You're going to do. Your lifestyle is going to change for sure. Whereas if you have that financial commitment of forced savings through buying property, you have to pay your mortgage. So you make sacrifices along the way.
Oh, and whatever money that they do manage to put in savings is actually invulnerable to inflation, which compounds the problem even further.
Right. And market fluctuations too.
Yeah.
So yes, the net worth of property owners, because that's the definition of an asset,
Yeah.
is generally higher.
Yeah.
Right.
So yes, landlords can absorb more shocks economically, but should they? That's the question. Should they? If they're not the ones living there, they're the ones providing safe housing, and nothing's really changed in terms of, like, it's just the cost of everything went up. Like all the input costs of owning that property went up. Why should the landlord swallow it? Unless they have their mortgage paid off, and they can choose to. That's a different story. But
Yeah.
most people don't.
Yeah.
So I don't understand it.
Yep.
I don't understand it. And I'm empathetic. I want to hear what people have to say. I would love to, hear what they have to say. But like, if you truly are one of those tenants that need social housing, then go get social housing help,
Yeah.
100%, yeah.
not from the private landlords.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's an issue in itself. That could be a whole other video, because I think the wait time is like 6 to 8 years.
Yeah, it's a big long lineup.
Ridiculous.
That's a long
huge-
wait.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, so private enterprises, private landlords aren't going to do it. Private enterprises, like those $1 billion companies that they're talking about, the billion funds, why should they do it?
They won't
Yeah.
do it.
Like I was trying to understand this too. I was trying to talk, like, I don't think this made it onto the camera, but during that segment.
Yeah.
But like, why should the billion dollar companies do it? Because those $1 billion companies are not from like one rich person, Warren Buffett, going there saying, I want to make housing for everybody. It's not that. It's made up of every person that invests in RSPs and TFSAs and funds and whatever. It's your savings. It's the retirements. It's the teachers. It's the pensioners.
Yep.
That money is put into these funds that buy this real estate, and they have to have a reasonable return.
Yep.
So they need their 5, 6, 7% return, 4, 5, 6, 7% return, right?
Yep.
So that these ones building these houses. So why are they doing this for break even or negative, if anything, or loss? So they have to make a profit too.
Yeah.
Not to mention the upkeep and maintenance and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I just don't get it. Like, it's not going to be the problem of the landlord. It's not going to be the problem of the $1 billion funds, $1 trillion funds, whatever it is. It's the responsibility of the government. 'Cause that's what the government is
100%. And
supposed to be
also
doing.
in BC, they have something which is like a rental subsidy program. I don't know if they have it in Ontario, but it's like, it's not housing. Like, you could go to a private landlord, and based on your income, the government tops you up.
That's how it should be done. I don't understand why
Yeah.
they don't do that. I
Yeah.
don't understand. Like, okay, so we know that the government is not efficient enough to build the housing we need.
houses, yeah.
They're not going to build
Yeah.
1.5 million houses in 10 years.
Yeah.
But what they can do is incent the private developers to build it and subsidize the tenants that need it the most, give them a subsidy so that they can afford the market rents.
Yeah. 100%.
And
That
that's
seems like the
solution
easiest
to
solution.
it all. It's a solution.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a fine balance, because the more money you print, the more money you give out to, the people that don't meet that criteria, that are under the, social welfare, that need that help. It's going to create more inflation, because obviously it's going to print more money, right? So it's a fine balance. But I think
But
there
it's being
should be,
done. It's being done in BC already.
it should be done here.
Yeah.
And that's how you solve the housing crisis, in my opinion.
I agree.
Create more supply, fund the people that need it the most to get that market rent. And when you have the market rents based on supply, then it'll just equalize and normalize. And that's what competition is. So many people say capitalism is a bad thing, but like, that's what competition is supposed to be doing, right? You have a choice between, I don't know, cars, Mercedes or BMW, let's just say,
Yeah.
or like Toyota, right?
Yeah.
You have a choice. There's different price points for them all, but there's different offerings, right? Maybe you want the luxury leather, or maybe you don't want to pay for that luxury leather. So then, you have a choice.
Right.
And that's how it should be for housing if we had more supply.
Yeah.
The bull leather.
The what?
We were just talking
Vegan
about
leather.
No, we were talking about earlier. There's like an option for bull leather in what car is it?
Bentley's.
Bentley.
That's Michael pricing.
Well, I guess bull markets, right? So that's why you want to.
I mean, ultimately, the problem is that we need a solution that brings us to an equilibrium. And it's very difficult to get to that point because not only do we have a lot of people who are just butting heads over the wrong issues, but we also have a lot of red tape. And there's just always the argument of, no, we don't have enough money, so we're not going to subsidize this. I mean, everything's being cut from healthcare to QP workers. Like, where are they going to put the money at the end of the day?
Yeah.
What do you mean? Where are they going to put the money?
Like,
Where are they going to decide to put it?
when are they going to decide, or are they ever going to decide to actually properly fund a program?
The government?
Yeah, they'll incentivize private builders or developers to actually start building and then sort of helping people get into those units so we can actually reach that equilibrium, because it's not going to work with all this red tape, because we've already started off on the wrong footing with the housing crisis with too much government interference in the wrong direction. So now we need some more government interference to actually get to that point.
Government support.
Government support, right? Sorry. To actually get to that point where we reach the equilibrium. But we need that push.
Sounds good in theory, for sure. And I think it makes sense. It's just, at the end of the day, when you're dealing with people, you're dealing with so many different opinions and so many different, choices and people's freedoms. And it's hard to please everybody. At the end of the day, you can't please everybody.
You can't. That's the thing. People are always in fight of this perfect utopia, and it doesn't exist, and it never will.
Yeah.
You just have to
work.
take responsibility for yourself. Yeah.
You have to work hard.
Yeah.
Can't get the handouts. I understand people that can't work. So those are the people that need the social support.
For sure.
But the people that can work, if you're just lazy, there's no excuses to make those comments on YouTube. Like, seriously. Just like...
We're going to get more now, Ken.
Just be a good human.
But it's true. Especially if you're in the comments and you're... like deep down, that you would want to be in that position instead and as well. Why hate? Just use that as inspiration to work hard and get to the same level. Like, I don't understand that.
I don't know. So I think there's an opportunity here if you are in the position to be able to provide housing and be a landlord. I'm not gonna get a lot of hate for this, but like there's an advantage if you have capital.
Yes.
Seriously, because there's a housing shortage. There's definitely a need. There's strong demand, right? And if you could provide that housing, good, safe housing that's affordable for people, or at least more competitively affordable, I should say, then you'll win in the long run.
Yeah,
for sure.
It's unfair advantage almost, like if you have that capital. And there's so many different strategies on, instead of finding excuses and being the victim and all that, there's so many different ways, like you're saying, Michelle, to make it happen. Yeah. Right? Because really, a lot of people forget that all you need is 5% down to buy a property, right? If you're less than 500,000, up to 500,000. Yeah. And what do you say? Where do you buy something for 500,000? Go to Red Deer, Alberta.
I got one right now.
Where?
Gonna come up.
Oh yeah. A studio, but like not everyone wants to live in studios, right?
But at least
you
get
could
in.
You could rent it out.
Well, what if you have a family? You're new to the country.
Oh, right.
So that's what I'm saying. You can go to like PEI or something. I don't know. I'm just
but you don't
the province, but like
you don't have to also sell like the nicest newest condo either. Like I've sold a place.
Yeah, Scarborough old condos you can still get with reasonable
less
maintenance
than
fees.
$500K. You could get it. Like I sold one up in Etobicoke a couple of years ago, and it was like 3 bedrooms, huge.
Yeah,
you could definitely renovated it for, I think we sold it for 400 something. And you could renovated it,
right.
Sure.
and it's like it's nice.
Yeah.
Sure. So for those people that have less than 20% down, you actually get an advantage in your terms of your mortgage because it's CMHC insured, because you're required to get insurance, mortgage insurance, if you're under 20%, which means that the banks will look at you favorably and they'll say, oh, this guy's insured. If he defaults on his payments, the mortgage insurer is going to help the banks out or whatever, right? However it works. So they get a better rate. So yes, you're paying the premium, but also you get a better rate. So don't let that be an excuse that, I need 20% down to get in. Get in with 5% down.
Yeah, I think so many people are just like, everything's over $1 million. It isn't.
Make a sacrifice. What's $1 million? Like, why is that the number that
I don't know.
Everyone's afraid of?
I have no idea.
It's just
a
number.
I don't know where people got it.
Why is everybody afraid of $1.3 billion of debt that we have as a country? You know what I mean? Like, why? That number could be 100 million. It could be $50 trillion.
Yeah.
It doesn't really matter. It's irrelevant at the end of the day because we're going to print more money to pay that, like to pay service the debt and also create social services. And in theory, we're going to inflate that debt away and we'll never pay that debt off. But as long as the quality of life is improving for the general population, what's wrong with printing more money? You steal from future generations by, you know, creating inflation. I totally get that. And that's not right. So there's a balance. And the government wants 2%, you know, like 7% is too much, but 2% is okay. They're going to drain your account by 2% every year. But by doing that, you'll never have to pay off the 1.3 billion in debt that we have as a country.
Yeah.
But you'll provide social services, you create new infrastructure, you create new roads, new jobs, new et cetera, new immigration programs, new whatever to make our lives all better. Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. We just got to keep the ball rolling.
Just got to keep productive.
Yep.
At the end of the day, it's all about productivity. This is why the focus on GDP matters so much. Gross domestic product, meaning as a country, as an aggregate, how much are we producing overall as a population?
Yep.
Meaning that what's our output? You know, because productivity is output, right? What are we outputting? What are we creating? What's the thing that we're creating? For real estate agents, for us, it's the guidance and support and consulting to make sure that you're making the right decision on your biggest transaction of your life, whether it's selling or buying. That's our product. And sure, it's not productive because we're not necessarily creating a product that we can sell and whatever, but like people need homes to live in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the service.
Okay. Well, anyway.
So the solution is.
So the solution, honestly, in my opinion, is to create more supply. And if you can't create more supply,
Government subsidized.
government subsidies for individuals that need it so that they can buy market housing instead of creating your own affordable housing, which is very difficult. At least doing both in conjunction with it is the answer to it all.
Yeah.
Cool.
It comes down to supply and demand.
That's what Singapore did.
Well, the two-tier system, right? Two-tier housing?
The HDB flat housing system.
Yeah, tell me more about that.
So from what I understand, the Singaporean government, one, builds the flats and they have a roster of people who apply on a wait list to actually get into it. And I believe they're assigned to the family who shoulder the mortgage, but it's spread over a long period of time because it's a government program. And I believe that they pretty much have all those years to pay it down. And it's not an amount that would cause them to not live comfortably. But at the same time, I believe they're actually allowed to pass that mortgage down to their inheritors further down the line. So it creates an equilibrium where, you know, some families don't have too many kids.
Right.
So they'll just have one kid who can just take over the mortgage and then continue to pay that down, but also continue to live in the place and have comfortable, safe housing.
So it's really long amortizations? Is that what it is?
I believe it is, yeah. And it's government subsidized housing where they actually build it for them and place them in there with the program.
I mean, okay, that'd be great if we could do that, but how come we can't do that? How come we can't create enough supply, but they can?
The funny thing is that I actually met a couple of people at a wedding who lived in those programs, and they said, "Oh my God, you have a backyard?" And I think that's the mentality that we have here. Everybody wants space. Everybody wants greenery. Everybody wants to have that privacy.
Yeah, that's why everyone thinks getting into the market is going to cost $1 million.
Yeah. And that's also why we have so much resistance to condo developments.
Well, I mean, we are like the second biggest landmass in the world. So, I mean, I think it is, right? So, yeah, we should. But urban sprawl is bad. I get that too. We're definitely entitled. But I think density is going to happen and you can't avoid it. In order to make things affordable, we have to squeeze into more spaces and create more supply. So if anybody has a solution for that, that'd be great. How to create more, maybe modular homes, you know?
Love modular homes.
All right. Anyway, with that, we got to go.
Gotta go.
Adios.
Add it up.